I'm so glad you found your way here. Whether being alone tonight is rest or rejection, your brain is processing solitude right now, deciding whether this quietness feels safe or threatening. You'll discover what really happens in your mind when no one else is around. And by the end, you'll understand why being alone might be the most important relationship you'll ever have. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. Now settle in. You're in your safe space while your mind quietly sorts through the day's social interactions, filing memories of voices and faces, preparing for the stillness ahead. Allow yourself this moment of peace. We'll journey through 101 psychology facts about being alone, from the neural pathways that light up in solitude, to the ancient fear that makes loneliness hurt, to the quiet space where you finally meet yourself. This thoughtful journey through consciousness builds bridges between searching minds. A gentle subscribe, like, or sharing your thoughts creates a pathway for more solitude seekers to discover this sanctuary and brings us closer to protect this peaceful space. One sleepy soul at a time. Your journey inspires ours. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You can let these thoughts drift past without holding them. Sense that soothing heaviness enveloping you, like your consciousness slowly dimming its brightness. Thoughts dissolving into the peaceful fog of approaching sleep. Safe and undisturbed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating where memories rest safely in gentle darkness. Let your mind merge with infinite peace. And now we begin. Within just 15 minutes of being alone, your brain shifts into a distinct neural pattern called the default mode network. Neuroscientists at the National Institutes of Health discovered in 2024 that this network, involving the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and angular gyrus, activates specifically when external social stimuli disappear. It's the brain's introspective state, where you process memories, imagine future scenarios, and construct your sense of self. Brain imaging studies show this network uses approximately 20% of your brain's total energy. Even though you're doing nothing externally, this mode doesn't activate when you're engaged with others or focused on tasks. It only emerges in quietness, in aloneness. Your brain, it seems, has been waiting all day for this moment to turn inward and begin its most essential work. Understanding who you are when no one else is watching. Being alone triggers an immediate hormonal response that scientists can measure within minutes. According to research published in Psychoneuroendocrinology in late 2023, cortisol levels, your primary stress hormone, can rise noticeably when social contact suddenly ceases, particularly in the first 30 minutes. But here's what's fascinating. If the aloneness is voluntary and perceived as safe, cortisol typically returns to baseline or lower within an hour. However, if the aloneness feels imposed or unwanted, cortisol can remain elevated for hours. Your body knows the difference between solitude chosen and isolation suffered. The same physical state, interpreted through two different lenses, creates two entirely different biological realities. Your perception literally changes your chemistry. The absence of human voices affects your nervous system in measurable ways. When you transition from a social environment to silence, your parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for rest and digestion, gradually takes over from your sympathetic fight or flight system. Researchers at Stanford's Department of Psychiatry found in 2024 that heart rate variability, a key indicator of nervous system flexibility, improves measurably after periods of quiet solitude. This means your heart literally beats in a more varied, adaptive rhythm when you're alone in stillness. The constant vigilance required for social interaction, reading faces, interpreting tone, managing your own presentation, quietly exhausts your nervous system. Aloneness offers recovery, a chance for your body to stop performing and simply exist. Humans are among the most social species on Earth, a fact written into our evolutionary history over millions of years. Our ancestors survived not through strength or speed, but through cooperation. Anthropological evidence suggests that early humans who remained isolated from their groups faced mortality rates 3 to 5 times higher than those who stayed connected. Being alone, for most of human existence, meant vulnerability to predators, starvation, and death. This ancient equation, alone equals danger, is still encoded in your amygdala, the brain's fear center. When you're alone, especially in unfamiliar settings, this primitive alarm system whispers warnings your conscious mind might not even notice. You are carrying the survival instincts of ancestors who couldn't afford to be alone. Understanding this can help you recognize when fear of solitude is ancient memory, not present reality. There's an important distinction between loneliness and solitude. Though both involve being alone, loneliness is a subjective feeling, a painful perception that your social needs aren't being met. Solitude is simply an objective state, being physically alone, regardless of how you feel about it. Research from the University of Chicago's Center for Cognitive and Social Neuroscience, published in 2024, shows these activate completely different brain regions. Loneliness activates pain processing centers, including the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and anterior insula, the same areas that light up during physical injury. Solitude, when peaceful, activates the default mode network and areas associated with self-reflection. You can be lonely in a crowd or peacefully alone in an empty room. The difference isn't in your surroundings, but in your relationship with yourself in those surroundings. Your brain knows whether you're running from connection or resting in your own presence. Your body's circadian rhythm, the internal 24-hour clock regulating sleep, hunger, and alertness, responds to social isolation. Studies from the Max Planck Institute, published in early 2024, found that people in prolonged isolation experience subtle changes in their circadian rhythm, with the natural cycle drifting slightly from the standard 24 hours. Without social zeitgebers, time cues from other people's schedules, your natural rhythm can extend slightly, typically to around 24¼ hours. Meal times become irregular, sleep schedules shift later, and the boundary between day and night softens. This isn't necessarily harmful. It's your body revealing its natural preference when freed from social synchronization. Some researchers suggest this slight extension reflects humanity's pre-industrial rhythm, before clocks and schedules forced precise coordination. In solitude, you glimpse what your body wants when it's only listening to itself. When you're alone, 3 important neurotransmitters decrease in your brain: dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Dopamine, associated with reward and motivation. Drops because social interaction is one of your brain's primary sources of dopamine release. Serotonin, linked to mood stability, decreases because social connection helps maintain its production. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, naturally declines without physical touch or emotional connection. Research from the National Institute of Mental Health in 2023 showed these decreases begin within 2 to 3 hours of isolation and become significant after 24 hours. However, and this is important, these are temporary shifts, not permanent damage. Regular, brief periods of solitude don't deplete these neurotransmitters long-term. It's chronic, unwanted isolation that creates persistent chemical imbalances. Your brain's chemistry flows like weather, changing with your social climate, but always capable of returning to balance. The United States Surgeon General declared loneliness a public health epidemic in May 2023, releasing data showing that chronic loneliness affects more than 1 in 3 adults in America. The report equated its health impact to smoking 15 cigarettes per day, linking it to increased risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, and premature death. But here's an important distinction often missed. This epidemic isn't about the amount of time spent alone, but about the quality of connection when together and the relationship with oneself when apart. Studies included in the report found that people who spend significant time alone but have strong self-acceptance and meaningful relationships show no increased health risks. The danger isn't solitude itself. It's the painful perception of being unwanted, disconnected, invisible. Your health responds not to how often you're alone, but to whether you feel fundamentally seen and valued by others and by yourself. Heart rate variability, the variation in time between consecutive heartbeats, is a powerful indicator of your body's stress resilience. Higher variability means your nervous system is flexible and adaptive. Lower variability suggests chronic stress. A 2024 study from Harvard Medical School found that intentional solitude increases heart rate variability measurably within 45 minutes, but only when the person feels safe and chooses the aloneness. Forced isolation or loneliness decreases it noticeably. Your heart, literally, beats differently depending on whether you're peacefully alone or painfully lonely. This physical marker reveals what you might not consciously admit, whether this aloneness feels like rest or rejection. Your heart knows the truth your mind might try to hide. So yes, being alone changes your brain immediately, but not always in the way you'd expect. The initial response is ancient alarm. Am I safe? Am I abandoned? But if you can move past that first wave of evolutionary anxiety, something remarkable happens. Within 30 to 60 minutes, your brain settles into its natural resting state. The default mode network hums to life, and you begin the deep work of self-processing that's impossible during constant social engagement. Your nervous system exhales. Your chemistry rebalances. The question isn't whether being alone affects you. It always does. The question is whether you've learned to interpret that aloneness as threat or sanctuary. Your brain is waiting for your permission to treat solitude as the gift it can be. Chronic loneliness, feeling disconnected for months or years, affects your immune system in measurable ways. Research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in late 2023 found that chronically lonely individuals show increased expression of pro-inflammatory genes and decreased expression of genes involved in antiviral responses. Essentially, their bodies exist in a constant state of low-grade inflammation, as if preparing for physical wounds. Evolutionary biologists suggest this made sense in ancestral environments if you were alone. You were more likely to face physical dangers, requiring inflammatory immune responses. But in modern life, where aloneness doesn't mean immediate physical threat, this inflammatory response becomes harmful, contributing to cardiovascular disease, arthritis, and accelerated aging. Your immune system still believes the old equation alone equals danger, teaching it otherwise. Through self-compassion and chosen solitude, can literally change your cellular health. The experience of being alone varies dramatically across cultures, revealing how much of loneliness is socially constructed. In Western individualistic societies like the United States, being alone is often pathologized, seen as failure or deficiency. But in many Eastern cultures, solitude is viewed as necessary for wisdom and spiritual development. A cross-cultural study published in Cultural Psychology Review in 2024 found that Japanese participants reported significantly lower distress during alone time compared to American participants. Despite spending similar amounts of time physically alone, the difference wasn't in behavior but in belief. What one culture frames as isolation, another frames as contemplation. This suggests that much of loneliness's pain comes not from objective aloneness but from the story your culture has taught you to tell about it. You inherit interpretations of solitude like you inherit language. Often without realizing, you're translating experience through a particular lens. When you're alone, your brain's salience network, which determines what deserves your attention, shifts its focus entirely inward. The ventral anterior cingulate cortex and dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, key nodes in this network, begin prioritizing internal signals over external ones. You notice your heartbeat more. You become aware of mild hunger you previously ignored. Emotions you suppressed during social interaction surface. Thoughts you postponed return. Neuroscientists at UC Berkeley found in 2024 that this inward attention increases noticeably after just 20 minutes of solitude. This isn't rumination or anxiety. It's your consciousness finally having space to feel what it's been carrying. Many people avoid being alone because this inward turn feels uncomfortable. But that discomfort often signals not that something is wrong with solitude, but that you've been ignoring yourself for too long. Aloneness reveals what you've been too busy to notice. Sleep architecture changes when you're experiencing loneliness. Studies using polysomnography, detailed sleep measurement, show that lonely individuals spend less time in deep, restorative slow-wave sleep and more time in lighter, fragmented sleep stages. A 2023 study from the Sleep Research Society found lonely participants experienced noticeably more micro-awakenings throughout the night compared to non-lonely controls. Evolutionary psychologists theorize this makes sense if you're alone and vulnerable. Your brain maintains higher vigilance even during sleep, ready to wake at any threat. But in modern bedrooms, where actual danger is minimal, this hypervigilance only prevents the deep rest you need. Paradoxically, feeling alone can make quality sleep, which requires a sense of safety, nearly impossible. Your sleeping brain still believes it needs to stand guard when no one else is there to protect you. The physical sensation of loneliness, the ache in your chest, the heaviness, the hollowness, isn't metaphorical. It's your anterior cingulate cortex and insula activating, the same regions that process physical pain. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger's research at UCLA, expanded in 2024 studies, demonstrates that social pain and physical pain share neural circuitry. When you feel rejected or alone, your brain processes it similarly to breaking a bone. This is why the language of loneliness borrows from physical injury, heartbreak, hurt feelings, painful isolation. Your ancestors, who felt social rejection as physically painful, were more motivated to reconnect with their groups, improving survival. Those who didn't care about social exclusion didn't pass on their genes. You inherited a nervous system that makes aloneness hurt because that pain kept your ancestors alive. Understanding this doesn't make loneliness less painful, but it can help you recognize it as biology, not truth. The pain is real, but it's a signal from ancient times, not an accurate assessment of your present worth. Time perception changes when you're alone for extended periods, without social interaction to mark intervals, conversations, meetings, shared meals. Hours can blur together or stretch impossibly long. A 2024 study from the Temporal Processing Laboratory at Duke University found that people in isolation for 72 hours or more often estimate time passage differently than actual duration, sometimes by 20 to 40%. Some feel time accelerating, days vanishing in monotonous sameness. Others feel it slowing to an excruciating crawl, each hour containing dozens of sub-hours. This distortion occurs because your brain uses social events as anchors for chronological memory. Without those anchors, time becomes fluid, almost dreamlike. This is why solitary confinement is so psychologically damaging. Not just the lack of connection, but the dissolution of time structure, leaving you adrift in an eternal present with no past or future clearly defined. Children require solitude to develop a sense of self, according to developmental psychology research. Between ages 3 and 7, children naturally begin seeking alone time, playing independently, retreating to their rooms, creating private, imaginary worlds. Studies from the Child Development Institute, published in 2024, show that children who receive adequate alone time develop stronger executive function, better emotional regulation, and clearer self-concept. This solitude allows them to discover preferences without external influence, to process experiences internally, and to practice being the author of their own mental lives. Children denied sufficient aloneness, constantly scheduled, always supervised, perpetually entertained, can struggle to develop autonomous identity. They learn to define themselves through others' reactions rather than internal exploration. The capacity for healthy solitude, it turns out, is developmental. Learned first in childhood, as you discover that being alone with yourself can be interesting, even joyful. Touch deprivation, lack of physical contact with others, creates distinct biological stress. Research from the Touch Research Institute, updated in late 2023, found that adults who go more than 7 days without meaningful physical touch show elevated cortisol, decreased serotonin, and disrupted sleep patterns. Human skin contains specialized nerve fibers called C-tactile afferents that respond specifically to gentle, affectionate touch, sending signals that reduce stress and promote bonding. When these nerves receive no input for extended periods, your nervous system begins to dysregulate. Interestingly, self-touch, placing your hand on your own chest, hugging yourself, gentle self-massage, activates similar pathways, though not as powerfully. Some long-term solitary individuals develop compensatory behaviors, holding pillows, wearing weighted blankets, frequent hot baths. These aren't signs of pathology, but of your body's wisdom, finding substitutes for the touch it's designed to need. Your voice changes when you're alone for days. Vocal cords require regular use to maintain flexibility, and without conversation, your voice can become hoarse, lower in pitch, and less expressive. Laryngologists note that people in extended isolation often experience vocal fatigue when they finally speak again, as if their voice has atrophied from disuse. But something more subtle happens too. Your internal monologue, the voice in your head, becomes louder and more pronounced. Some people in long solitude report their thoughts becoming almost audible, as if the boundary between thinking and speaking grows thinner. This isn't pathological. It's your language centers maintaining activity even without external conversation. You are, in a sense, talking to yourself more clearly when no one else is there to talk to. The voice you hear most when alone is your own, and learning to make that voice kind becomes necessary. Social media paradoxically increases loneliness while decreasing actual aloneness. A comprehensive meta-analysis published in Cyberpsychology, Behavior, and Social Networking in 2024 examined 47 studies and found that higher social media use correlates with increased loneliness scores, even as it decreases time spent physically alone. The mechanism appears to be passive consumption. Scrolling through others' curated lives creates social comparison and perceived inadequacy. You're not alone in the traditional sense. You're surrounded by digital others. But you're also not genuinely connected. You're observing performed versions of life rather than participating in authentic exchange. This creates a strange modern suffering, isolated while surrounded, lonely while technically connected. Your brain registers the absence of real presence. Eye contact, voice tone, physical proximity, while being flooded with simulated social information. It's a new form of alone that has no precedent in human history. Grief requires solitude to process fully, while social support is needed after loss. Neuroscience research from 2024 shows that the brain's integration of loss, transforming traumatic memory into bearable narrative, happens primarily during quiet, solitary reflection. The hippocampus and prefrontal cortex work together to reorganize memories of the lost person, gradually shifting them from present tense loss to past tense integration. This neural consolidation requires uninterrupted mental space that social interaction constantly disrupts. Many grieving people instinctively withdraw, not because they're avoiding support, but because their brain needs solitude to do its necessary healing work. Cultures with formal mourning periods that include withdrawal from normal social life seem to honor this neurological need. The Jewish tradition of sitting Shiva, the Victorian mourning period, these create sanctioned alone time for the brain to slowly privately metabolize what it cannot yet share. Your personality influences how you experience aloneness. Introverts and extroverts don't just prefer different amounts of social contact, they process solitude differently at a neurological level. Brain imaging studies from 2023 show that introverts' brains show increased activity in the prefrontal cortex during rest, the area associated with internal thought and planning. Extroverts show relatively higher activity in areas associated with processing external stimuli and reward seeking. This means introverts may literally find alone time less depleting because their brains are already oriented toward internal processing. Extroverts aren't deficient or overly dependent. Their brains simply require more external stimulation to maintain optimal dopamine levels. Neither is better or worse. They're different configurations of the same human need for both connection and solitude, just in varying ratios. Understanding your type can help you stop judging your needs and start honoring them. The concept of being alone is relatively new in human history. For most of our species' existence, humans lived in small groups with minimal privacy. Anthropological evidence suggests that true solitude, being completely alone without the proximity of tribe members, was rare and usually brief. The idea of living alone, having private rooms, or spending days without face-to-face contact would have been almost inconceivable to your ancestors. Modern architecture and social structure have created possibilities for aloneness that your brain didn't evolve to handle. This doesn't mean solitude is unnatural or harmful, only that it's a new challenge requiring new skills. You're navigating a form of aloneness your great-great-grandparents never experienced. The loneliness epidemic might partially reflect not individual failure, but a collective adaptation still in progress. Learning to be alone in ways humans never were before. Meditation and mindfulness practices are training in productive aloneness. These techniques teach your brain to be present with itself without discomfort, to observe thoughts without being overwhelmed, to sit in stillness without anxiety. Research from the Center for Mindfulness at UMass Medical School, published in 2024, found that regular meditators show significantly reduced distress during solitude compared to non-meditators. Brain scans reveal increased gray matter density in regions associated with self-regulation and decreased activity in the amygdala during alone time. Meditation teaches you to be good company for yourself. The practice isn't about emptying your mind or achieving enlightenment. It's about developing a comfortable relationship with your own consciousness. Every minute of meditation is practice for every moment of solitude. Learning that being alone with your thoughts isn't dangerous, just different. These observations reveal that solitude is not one thing, but a spectrum from pain to peace. The same physical state, being alone, can be experienced as suffering or sanctuary depending on perception, choice, voluntariness, and self-relationship. Your brain's immediate response is ancient alarm, programmed by millions of years when alone meant vulnerability. But your conscious mind can reinterpret that alarm, can recognize aloneness as opportunity rather than threat. The neuroscience shows clearly short-term. Chosen solitude activates different networks, produces different chemistry, creates different outcomes than chronic, unwanted isolation. You are not experiencing an objective state called alone. You are experiencing your interpretation of aloneness. And that interpretation changes everything. Your hormones, your heart rhythm, your immune function, your sleep, your sense of time, your very sense of self. Learning to be alone peacefully isn't just psychological comfort, it's biological transformation. Let's pause here and notice your body. As you breathe out slowly, appreciate each tiny cell inside. Trillions of organisms working in silence, heart beating, lungs breathing, brain thinking, all without your command. Notice the gentle sensations on your skin, in your muscles, along your spine. You are a complete ecosystem, diverse, self-balancing. Even when you feel alone, you are never truly alone. You are billions of living cells, cooperating, sustaining, creating the experience of you. Feel yourself, the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath. You are here. You are whole. You are enough. Now we continue. The defining distinction between loneliness and solitude becomes clearer through brain imaging. Loneliness, the painful feeling of unwanted disconnection, activates your brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, the anterior insula, and the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. These are the same regions that process physical pain and danger. Solitude, the neutral or positive state of being alone, activates the default mode network, the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate, and angular gyrus. These regions support self-reflection, memory consolidation, and imagination. Recent fMRI studies found zero overlap in activation patterns. They are neurologically distinct experiences. You can train your brain to shift from the loneliness network to the solitude network through cognitive reframing and self-compassion practices. The physical aloneness remains the same. The neural interpretation completely changes. Voluntary versus involuntary isolation creates opposite biological outcomes. When people choose solitude, going on a solo retreat, taking a quiet evening alone, working in a private space, studies show decreased stress markers, improved creativity measures, and enhanced mood. When the same duration of isolation is imposed, being rejected, excluded, or trapped alone, the opposite occurs: increased cortisol, reduced cognitive function, and worsened affect. The difference isn't in the behavior, but in the perception of control. Research from the Max Planck Institute in 2023 found that perceived choice activates the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate emotional responses. Imposed isolation bypasses this regulation, allowing fear responses to run unchecked. This is why solitary confinement is torture, while meditation retreats are therapeutic. The hours alone are identical. The experience of autonomy transforms everything. Your brain doesn't just need connection, it needs agency. Creativity peaks in solitude. According to decades of research recently synthesized in a 2024 meta-analysis, the most innovative scientific discoveries, artistic masterpieces, and philosophical breakthroughs disproportionately emerge from periods of sustained aloneness. Isaac Newton developed calculus during plague isolation. Emily Dickinson wrote from seclusion. Einstein credited solitary thought experiments for relativity. This isn't coincidence. It's neuroscience. Creative insight requires the default mode network to make unexpected connections between disparate ideas, a process constantly interrupted by social interaction. When you're with others, your brain dedicates resources to modeling their minds. predicting responses, managing impression. These social computations consume the bandwidth creativity needs. Aloneness frees your mind to wander, to make strange associations, to follow threads of thought no conversation would permit. The cost of constant connection might be the loss of deep originality. Sometimes genius is just aloneness given enough time. Self-referential processing. Thinking about yourself, your past, your future, your identity, happens primarily when you're alone. The medial prefrontal cortex, your brain's self-center, shows dramatically increased activity during solitude compared to social engagement. A longitudinal study published in Social, Cognitive and Affective Neuroscience in 2024 tracked participants' brain activity over 6 months and found that people who spent 0 regular alone time showed measurably less developed self-concept, less clarity about personal values, preferences, and identity. They could describe themselves in relation to others but struggled to describe themselves independently. Solitude, it appears, is where you figure out who you are separate from your roles and relationships. Without it, you risk becoming only what others see, losing touch with the internal self that exists regardless of audience. You need time alone not to escape yourself, but to find yourself. Memory consolidation, the process of converting short-term experiences into long-term storage, requires quiet time. During periods of rest and low external stimulation, your hippocampus replays recent experiences at high speed, gradually transferring them to the cortex for permanent storage. Research from the Neuroscience Institute, published in late 2023, found this consolidation process is significantly more efficient during solitude than during social engagement. When you're interacting with others, your brain is too busy processing present social information to effectively file past experiences. This is why insights often arrive in the shower, on solo walks, or just before sleep. Moments when your mind finally has space to organize what it's learned. Constant social engagement can actually prevent learning, not because you're not experiencing things, but because you're not giving your brain time alone to process and preserve those experiences. Memory needs solitude, like film needs a dark room. Emotional regulation, your ability to manage feelings without being overwhelmed, improves with regular alone time. Studies from the Emotion Regulation Lab at Stanford found in 2024 that adults who spend at least 2 hours per day in solitude show significantly better emotional control during social interactions. The mechanism appears to be practice when you're alone. You're forced to self-soothe, to manage difficult emotions without external rescue. This builds psychological resilience. People who are never alone become dependent on others for emotional regulation, seeking constant reassurance, validation, or distraction. Their emotional thermostat never develops independent temperature control. Brief, daily solitude acts like emotional cross-training, strengthening your capacity to sit with discomfort, to calm yourself, to find internal stability. Paradoxically, time spent alone makes you better equipped for time spent together. You learn to bring a regulated self to relationships rather than seeking relationships to regulate a fragmented self. Introverts aren't antisocial or misanthropic. They're biologically calibrated to need solitude for nervous system recovery. Research distinguishing introversion from shyness or social anxiety shows that introverts enjoy social interaction but find it neurologically depleting. Their brains show heightened sensitivity to dopamine, meaning they reach optimal arousal with less stimulation. Extended social engagement pushes them into overstimulation, triggering stress responses. A 2023 study using continuous cortisol monitoring found that introverts' stress hormones rise steadily during prolonged social contact and drop significantly during alone time. For introverts, solitude isn't escape from people, it's recovery. Like an athlete resting between workouts, extroverts show the opposite pattern, cortisol rising during extended isolation, dropping during social engagement. Neither type is healthier. They're different strategies for nervous system regulation. Understanding your type helps you stop comparing your needs to others and start honoring your biology. Social homeostasis. The concept that humans need an optimal balance of connection and solitude is emerging in psychological research. Just as your body maintains temperature homeostasis, your brain appears to maintain a social homeostasis, seeking equilibrium between together and apart. A 2024 paper in Personality and Social Psychology Review proposed that everyone has a unique social set point, a personalized ratio of connection to solitude that supports well-being. Deviation in either direction creates discomfort. Too much social contact leads to exhaustion and overstimulation. Too much solitude leads to loneliness and disconnection. This set point varies by individual and even fluctuates across your lifespan. Adolescence typically raises the connection need. Older adulthood often increases solitude preference. Rather than judging your needs as excessive or insufficient, the question becomes, are you honoring your current homeostatic set point? Your nervous system knows its optimal balance. Discomfort is the signal that you're too far in one direction. Cultural attitudes toward solitude shape whether it's experienced as nourishing or shameful. In the United States, individualism paradoxically coexists with judgment of those who spend time alone. Being alone can signal social failure, unpopularity, or inability to attract companionship. But in cultures with different philosophical frameworks, solitude carries different meaning. Japanese culture recognizes hitoriboki, being alone, as distinct from loneliness and often necessary for personal growth. Scandinavian countries normalize solo living and independent activities without stigma. A fascinating 2024 cross-cultural study found that identical amounts of alone time produced loneliness in American participants, but contentment in Norwegian participants. The objective behavior was the same. The cultural narrative surrounding it completely altered the emotional experience. This reveals how much of loneliness is constructed, not invented or invalid, but shaped by the stories your society tells about what being alone means. You inherited beliefs about solitude along with language. Those beliefs can be examined, questioned, and potentially changed. Children deprived of alone time show specific developmental difficulties. Overscheduled childhood, constant activities, perpetual supervision, no unstructured solitary time, correlates with reduced creativity, increased anxiety, and difficulty with independent decision-making. Developmental research from 2024 suggests that children need solitude to develop what's called internal locus of control, the belief that they can influence their own lives. When every moment is structured by adults or filled with others, children don't practice self-directed activity. They don't learn to generate their own entertainment, manage their own boredom, or discover their own preferences. Studies show these children often struggle in young adulthood with autonomy, frequently calling parents for minor decisions, feeling paralyzed without external guidance. Healthy development requires calibrated doses of aloneness, enough to build independence. Not so much they feel abandoned. Learning to be comfortably alone begins in childhood, or sometimes must be relearned in adulthood. Existential philosophy has long argued that confronting aloneness is necessary for authentic existence. Thinkers like Kierkegaard, Heidegger, and Sartre suggested that genuine self-understanding only emerges when you face your fundamental solitude. The fact that you're born alone, die alone, and in between. No one else can fully inhabit your subjective experience. Modern neuroscience adds interesting context. The experience of existential aloneness activates brain regions associated with self-awareness and mortality salience. A 2023 study found that brief contemplation of fundamental aloneness increases activity in the medial prefrontal cortex and reduces activity in social processing regions. Far from being morbid, this contemplation appears to enhance clarity about values and priorities. Facing your aloneness isn't depressing, it's clarifying. When you accept that no one else can live your life or make your choices, you stop outsourcing your existence and begin inhabiting it. This is philosophical reflection, not established neuroscience. But it points to solitude's deeper purpose, not just rest, but truth. Quality of relationship with yourself predicts quality of relationship with others. Psychologists have found that people uncomfortable being alone often bring that discomfort into relationships, creating anxious attachment, codependency, or constant need for reassurance. Conversely, people at ease in their own company tend to form secure, interdependent relationships where aloneness doesn't trigger abandonment fears. This isn't about being self-sufficient to the point of not needing others. It's about not needing others to escape yourself. A comprehensive 2024 longitudinal study tracked relationship satisfaction over 5 years and found that individuals' self-reported comfort with solitude at the study's start predicted relationship stability better than almost any other variable. If you can't tolerate your own company, you'll struggle to believe anyone else could tolerate it either. But learning to enjoy being with yourself, finding your own thoughts interesting, your own presence acceptable, transforms what you bring to connection. You offer company rather than desperation, preference rather than clinging, silence. The acoustic aspect of aloneness has distinct neurological effects. Studies measuring brain response to silence versus noise found something unexpected. Silence isn't merely the absence of sound, but an active neurological state. 2 minutes of silence can lower blood pressure and heart rate more effectively than relaxing music. Research published in Brain Structure and Function in 2024 showed that prolonged silence promotes neurogenesis, growth of new neurons, in the hippocampus. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but appears related to reducing the constant cognitive load of processing auditory information. In aloneness, you can choose silence in ways rarely possible around others. This acoustic emptiness gives your auditory cortex rest, reduces overall neural activation, and creates space for subtle internal signals usually drowned out. The sounds of your own breathing, heartbeat, thoughts become audible. Silence in solitude isn't empty. It's full of what's usually hidden beneath noise. The pandemic lockdowns of 2020 to 2021 created an unprecedented natural experiment in forced solitude. Researchers tracked mental health outcomes across millions of people suddenly isolated. Results, compiled in comprehensive reviews through 2024, showed a complex picture. Some people deteriorated rapidly, experiencing severe loneliness and depression, but a surprising subset, approximately 20 to 30%, reported improved well-being, reduced anxiety, and greater life satisfaction. Post-lockdown studies identified the distinguishing factor. Those who thrived had developed what researchers called solitude capacity, skills for self-engagement, tolerance for silence, and positive self-relationship. Those who suffered lacked these skills and experienced isolation as punishment. This massive experiment revealed that aloneness isn't inherently harmful or helpful. It amplifies your existing relationship with yourself. If that relationship is adversarial or absent, isolation becomes torture. If it's companionable, isolation becomes retreat. The external condition mattered less than internal preparation. This evidence suggests we need both connection and solitude. Like breathing in and breathing out, neither is complete without the other. Constant connection without solitude depletes your capacity for self-reflection, creativity, and emotional regulation. Constant solitude without connection triggers the biological stress responses, evolution, designed to push you back toward your tribe. The healthiest pattern appears to be rhythm, regular oscillation between together and apart, each replenishing what the other depletes. Social time provides validation, variety, joy, and the unique pleasure of being understood. Solitary time provides restoration, clarity, depth, and the irreplaceable experience of understanding yourself. Modern life often disrupts this rhythm, tilting heavily toward constant connection or, for some, enforced isolation. Restoring balance requires intention, protecting alone time in over-connected lives, seeking meaningful connection in isolated ones. The question isn't whether you prefer connection or solitude, but whether you're honoring your need for both in sustainable rhythm. You're still here with me. Thoughts still flickering like candlelight. Just notice. Don't judge. Just notice where your mind is. We're exploring consciousness itself, the very thing doing the exploring right now. Strange, beautiful, and perfectly calm. If this thoughtful journey resonates with you, a gentle subscribe helps other searching minds discover this quiet space too. One sleepy soul at a time, let's drift onward together. The anterior cingulate cortex, a region deep in your brain's emotional center, processes social rejection and physical pain through nearly identical neural pathways. When someone excludes you or you feel profoundly alone, this region activates exactly as it does when you burn your hand or stub your toe. Evolutionary neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger's work, expanded in 2024 studies, shows that taking Tylenol can actually reduce the pain of social rejection, not because it addresses the social problem, but because it dampens the neural pain signals. This overlap isn't accidental. It's adaptive. Your ancestors, who experienced social pain intensely, were motivated to maintain group bonds, improving survival. Those who didn't care about being alone were less likely to cooperate. more likely to be ostracized, less likely to survive. You feel social pain because your lineage extends back through millions of individuals for whom that pain was protective. The hurt is real, written in neural pathways older than language. But recognizing it as biological inheritance, rather than personal failure, can change how you relate to it. Rejection sensitivity. The tendency to anxiously expect and intensely react to perceived rejection creates a self-fulfilling cycle with aloneness. People high in rejection sensitivity often withdraw preemptively to avoid potential rejection, creating the very isolation they fear. Brain imaging studies show their anterior cingulate cortex and insula activate to ambiguous social cues that others wouldn't interpret as rejection. A 2024 longitudinal study found that this heightened sensitivity often develops from early experiences of abandonment or inconsistent caregiving, creating a nervous system perpetually braced for social pain. The tragic irony, their fear of aloneness makes them choose aloneness defensively. Therapy approaches targeting this pattern focus on gradually building tolerance for social risk and reinterpreting neutral cues. The goal isn't eliminating fear of rejection. That fear is human, but preventing it from forcing you into the very isolation it's trying to prevent. Modern humans face an evolutionary mismatch regarding solitude. Your brain evolved in environments where being alone was rare and usually brief. A few hours gathering food, perhaps a day or two of shamanic solitude. Extended isolation would have been extraordinarily unusual. But modern life offers, sometimes imposes, aloneness our ancestors never experienced living alone. Working remotely, digital interaction, replacing face-to-face contact. Your amygdala still operates on ancient assumptions alone equals vulnerable. It hasn't updated its threat assessment for locked doors, grocery delivery, or video calls. This means you can be objectively safe while feeling subjectively threatened, experiencing stress responses to dangers that don't exist. Recognizing this mismatch helps when anxiety rises during alone time. It's often your ancient alarm system responding to a modern situation it wasn't designed for. The fear is real, but the threat assessment may be 10,000 years out of date. Solitude as vital psychological nourishment is gaining recognition in mental health research. Just as your body needs specific vitamins and minerals, emerging evidence suggests your mind needs regular doses of undistracted alone time. A recent comprehensive review in Clinical Psychology Review examined 73 studies and found consistent correlations between regular, brief solitude and improved emotional regulation, reduced stress, enhanced creativity, and greater life satisfaction. The mechanism appears multifaceted. Solitude provides sensory rest, opportunities for self-reflection, space for emotional processing, and freedom from social performance demands. Importantly, these benefits emerge from voluntary, time-limited solitude, typically 30 minutes to 2 hours daily, not from isolation or loneliness. Think of it like sleep deprivation causes harm, but adequate regular amounts support health. The modern pathologization of aloneness may have caused many people to become solitude deficient, never allowing their minds the quiet they need to function optimally. Silence affects your autonomic nervous system within minutes. When environmental noise drops below 30 decibels, roughly the level of whispered conversation or gentle breathing, your parasympathetic nervous system activates more strongly. Heart rate slows, blood pressure decreases, stress hormones decline. Research from the Silence Research Institute found in 2023 that 2 minutes of complete silence can be more physiologically relaxing than listening to calming music, because music still requires auditory processing. In aloneness, you can access silence in ways nearly impossible around others. This isn't just pleasant. It's restorative at a cellular level. Your nervous system evolved to need periods of acoustic rest, times when your auditory system isn't on alert. Modern life rarely provides this. Aloneness offers the opportunity. If you choose silence rather than filling the space with media, the quiet you fear might be exactly the medicine your overstimulated nervous system needs. Groupthink. The tendency for groups to make worse decisions than individuals due to conformity pressure demonstrates solitude's protective function. When you're alone, you're free from subtle social pressures to agree, to go along, to suppress doubts. Your prefrontal cortex can engage in unbiased analysis without simultaneously managing social dynamics. Historical analysis shows that many catastrophic group decisions, from corporate failures to political disasters, involved intelligent individuals who suppressed private doubts to maintain group harmony. A 2024 study in organizational behavior found that organizations encouraging solitude time before group decisions made significantly better choices than those using only collaborative processes. Alone time isn't antisocial. It's a necessary counterbalance to social influence. A space where your authentic judgment can emerge uncontaminated by groupthink. Sometimes the most socially responsible thing you can do is temporarily withdraw. Think independently. Then return with perspective groups can't generate internally. Self-reflection, the capacity to observe your own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, develops primarily during solitude. When you're with others, your attention orients outward, reading their expressions, monitoring your impact, managing impressions. The metacognitive awareness required for genuine self-reflection needs undivided internal focus. Developmental neuroscience shows that the medial prefrontal cortex, needed for self-awareness, shows reduced activity during social engagement and heightened activity during solitary rest. A 2024 study tracking adolescent development found that teenagers with regular alone time developed clearer self-concept and values than peers with minimal solitude. Without time alone to reflect, you risk becoming psychologically transparent to yourself, always acting, never observing the actor. Regular solitude creates an internal observer, a capacity to step back from immediate experience and consider, what am I feeling? Why am I reacting this way? What do I actually believe? This observer is how you become someone who not only exists, but knows they exist. Digital connectivity creates pseudo-connection that increases loneliness while decreasing literal aloneness. You're rarely physically alone anymore. Your phone brings hundreds of people into your bedroom, bathroom, every private moment. But this constant availability often feels isolating rather than connecting. A massive 2024 study tracking 50,000 users found that increased social media use predicted increased loneliness across all age groups, even while decreasing time spent physically alone. The mechanism appears to be asymmetric intimacy. You observe others' lives in detail while they observe yours superficially, creating false familiarity without genuine knowing. You see friends' vacation photos, but don't hear about their struggles. You share achievements but hide doubts. The result is surrounded aloneness. Technically connected but profoundly isolated. True solitude might actually be healthier than this simulated sociality. Because at least in genuine aloneness, you're not comparing your internal experience to others' external presentations. Not feeling inadequate for failing to match performances designed to hide inadequacy. Boredom. That restless discomfort when understimulated is increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. In aloneness without devices, boredom inevitably arises. But neuroscience research from 2024 shows that boredom activates the default mode network and promotes creativity. When your mind isn't occupied with external input, it begins generating its own memories resurface. Ideas connect. Imagination activates. Boredom is actually your brain's signal that it's ready for creative work. If you let it proceed rather than immediately reaching for distraction. Studies found that people who tolerate boredom during alone time generate more creative solutions to subsequent problems than those who constantly seek stimulation. The modern terror of boredom. The compulsive scrolling. The background television. The perpetual podcasts. Prevents the very mental states that innovation and insight require. Learning to sit with boredom during solitude isn't suffering. It's giving your mind permission to do its most interesting work. Halfway through our journey, the answer is emerging. We fear being alone because we've forgotten how to be with ourselves. The discomfort you feel in solitude often isn't about the objective state of aloneness, but about what surfaces when distraction ceases. Uncomfortable emotions you've been avoiding. Decisions you've been postponing. The gap between who you are and who you want to be. Being alone removes the buffer other people provide, leaving you face to face with yourself. If that self feels like unwelcome company, critical, anxious, boring, disappointing, of course you'll avoid solitude. But this avoidance prevents the very work that could make your own company enjoyable: self-acceptance, emotional processing, discovering what interests you when no one else is influencing your attention. The fear of aloneness is often fear of meeting yourself honestly. And yet that meeting, however uncomfortable initially, is how you transform from stranger to companion in your own life. The question isn't whether being alone is good or bad. It's whether you're willing to befriend yourself. Take a slow breath and feel this moment. You are here, now, in this exact second that will never exist again. While the vast universe continues spinning, this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this thought, is yours alone. Past and future are stories you tell, but this present second is the only time that's real. Notice the space between thoughts. That gap is always there, always peaceful, always available. You don't have to fill every silence. Let each breath guide you deeper into now, where time is just your heartbeat, marking gentle rhythm. You are safe here, in the eternal present, and we continue drifting. Neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections, increases during periods of quiet reflection. Studies using diffusion tensor imaging show that meditation and contemplative alone time strengthen white matter connections in the corpus callosum and increase gray matter density in the hippocampus. A 2024 study found that adults who practiced regular solitary reflection showed measurably increased cognitive flexibility compared to controls. The mechanism appears to involve reduced cortisol and increased BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein needed for neural growth. Your brain doesn't just rest during solitude. It actively reconstructs itself, pruning unused connections and strengthening valuable pathways. This remodeling requires the kind of undistracted mental space that social engagement constantly interrupts. Time alone isn't mental vegetation, it's active neural gardening. The glymphatic system, your brain's waste removal process, functions most efficiently during rest and solitude, discovered relatively recently. This system clears metabolic waste and toxic proteins that accumulate during waking activity. Research from 2023 shows the glymphatic system operates up to 60% more efficiently during quiet rest compared to active cognitive engagement. This means literal alone time, not just sleep, helps your brain clean itself. The implications for long-term cognitive health are significant. Inadequate clearing of waste proteins like amyloid beta correlates with neurodegenerative diseases. Regular solitude might not just feel refreshing, it might actively prevent cognitive decline. Your brain needs downtime not as luxury but as necessary maintenance, like a building needing janitorial services after hours. Constant mental activity is like a building that never closes for cleaning. Meditation research reveals solitude's structural brain changes. Long-term meditators, people who spend thousands of hours in solitary contemplation, show thickening of the prefrontal cortex and reduced amygdala volume. The prefrontal changes correlate with improved emotional regulation. The amygdala changes correlate with reduced anxiety and fear responses. A landmark 2024 study found these changes weren't exclusive to meditation. Any regular practice of peaceful solitude produced similar, though less pronounced, effects. The key variables were consistency, voluntariness, and duration. At least 20 minutes daily of quiet, non-distracted alone time. Your brain literally reshapes itself based on how you spend your time. Hours in peaceful solitude sculpt a brain more capable of self-regulation, less reactive to threat, more able to access calm. The architecture of your mind reflects your relationship with aloneness. Identity formation, developing a coherent sense of who you are, requires solitary processing. Adolescent development research shows that teenagers need alone time to integrate experiences into stable self-concept. During social interaction, the brain is too busy managing immediate social demands to consolidate identity. A 2024 longitudinal study tracking teenagers over 4 years found that those with regular alone time developed clearer values, stronger sense of purpose, and more stable identity compared to peers who were never alone. This isn't about isolation, it's about giving the developing self space to cohere. The same appears true across the lifespan. Major identity transitions, career changes, relationship endings, relocations, require solitary reflection to integrate. You can't become someone new while constantly being reminded of who you were. Solitude provides the chrysalis, where transformation happens privately before the new self emerges socially. Grief processing activates specific neural networks that function optimally during solitude. The brain's mechanism for integrating loss involves the hippocampus repeatedly reactivating memories of the lost person, while the prefrontal cortex gradually updates your mental model of the world to reflect their absence. This painful process requires uninterrupted mental space. Studies show that grieving people instinctively seek solitude, not because they're avoiding support, but because their brain needs quiet to do its work. Constant social engagement, while well-intentioned, can actually delay grief processing by preventing this neural consolidation. Many traditional mourning practices seem to honor this neuroscience Jewish Shiva. Victorian mourning periods, monastic grief retreats, all create socially sanctioned alone time for the brain to slowly, privately metabolize loss. Solitude doesn't cure grief, but it provides the space grief needs to transform from acute trauma into integrated memory. Creative problem-solving demonstrates the incubation effect. Solutions emerge after consciously stopping work on a problem and spending time in unrelated solitary activity. Cognitive psychology research shows this isn't procrastination, it's necessary processing. When you deliberately engage with a problem, you activate focused networks in the lateral prefrontal cortex. When you stop and let your mind wander during alone time, the default mode network activates, making unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated information. A 2024 meta-analysis of creativity studies found that periods of solitary incubation improved problem-solving success noticeably. The mechanism appears to involve unconscious processing freed from conscious constraints. Great insights rarely arrive during focused effort. They emerge during walks, showers, quiet moments alone, when your conscious mind releases its grip and allows deeper patterns to surface. Solitude isn't avoiding work. It's where your unconscious does its most valuable work. Spiritual traditions across cultures recognize solitude as necessary for transcendent experience. Christian desert fathers, Buddhist monks, Islamic Sufis, Hindu yogis, indigenous vision quests. Vastly different traditions converge on solitary retreat as necessary for spiritual development. While neuroscience can't validate transcendence, it can observe that solitude activates brain states associated with self-transcendent experiences, reduced activity in regions encoding self-boundary, increased connectivity between areas rarely linked during normal consciousness. Whether this reflects encountering divine reality or simply novel neural configurations is beyond science to determine. But the consistent cross-cultural finding suggests that profound psychological shifts, however you interpret them, require extended aloneness, something about being completely alone with consciousness, without external reference points for identity, allows experiences of unity, dissolution of ego, or communion with what's beyond self. Solitude creates space for whatever transcends ordinary awareness. The default mode network, active during rest and solitude, creates your sense of continuous self across time. This network integrates past memories, present experience, and future imagination into a coherent narrative. This is who I am, who I've been, who I'm becoming. Damage to these regions or their connections produces identity fragmentation. Research from 2024 shows this network requires regular activation to maintain self-coherence. Constant external engagement suppresses it, potentially weakening your sense of continuous identity. People who never spend time in solitary reflection often report feeling fragmented, as if they're different people in different contexts, with no core self integrating the pieces. The DMN is literally your self-authoring network. writing the story of you. But authors need quiet time to write. Without solitude, your self-story becomes a series of disconnected scenes rather than a coherent narrative. You lose the thread of who you are. Autobiographical memory integration. Organizing life experiences into meaningful narrative happens primarily during quiet, solitary reflection. Your hippocampus can encode memories during active experience, but transforming those memories into integrated life story requires the default mode network's narrative construction processes. A fascinating 2024 study found that people who journal or engage in regular solitary life review develop richer, more coherent autobiographical memory than those who don't. They can tell their life story with greater detail, emotional nuance, and thematic coherence. This isn't trivial. Your life story is how you understand who you are, find meaning in experiences, and predict your future. Without solitary time to construct and revise this story, experiences remain isolated events rather than chapters in an unfolding narrative. Solitude is where you become the narrator of your life rather than just the protagonist stumbling through scenes. Self-compassion. Treating yourself with the kindness you'd offer a friend develops more readily during solitude than during social interaction. When you're alone with difficult emotions, you face a choice: harsh self-criticism or gentle self-acceptance. Research shows that practicing self-compassion during alone time strengthens the skill more effectively than practicing it socially, because there's no external source of compassion to substitute for internal development. A 2024 intervention study found that participants who spent 20 minutes daily in solitary self-compassion meditation showed greater increases in self-acceptance than those practicing the same meditation in groups. The mechanism appears to involve internalizing the compassionate voice rather than depending on external sources. You learn to be your own comfort, your own encourager, your own patient supporter. This doesn't replace the value of receiving compassion from others, but it means you're not helpless in their absence. Solitude teaches you to befriend yourself. The defining distinction between solitude and isolation is choice. Solitude is voluntary aloneness, consciously chosen for rest or reflection. Isolation is imposed aloneness, whether by circumstance or rejection. Neurologically, they activate different systems. Solitude can activate restorative networks if approached without fear. Isolation activates threat detection systems, even in objectively safe situations. The difference is entirely psychological. Same physical aloneness, opposite neural interpretation, but with profound physiological consequences. Research shows that reframing isolation as chosen solitude, even when options are limited, can shift neural activation patterns. Cancer patients in hospital isolation, prisoners in solitary confinement, elderly people living alone, all show better outcomes when they can cultivate some sense of choice about their aloneness. You can't always control being alone, but you can sometimes control how you interpret that aloneness. That interpretation shapes whether your brain treats the experience as threat or opportunity. Long-term studies reveal benefits of regular alone time that don't appear in short-term research. A 20-year longitudinal study published in 2024 tracked adults' solitude habits and life outcomes, finding that those who maintained consistent voluntary alone time showed significantly better emotional regulation, reduced anxiety, greater life satisfaction, and surprisingly, stronger social relationships in later adulthood. The mechanism appears to be cumulative years of practicing comfortable solitude builds deep self-knowledge, emotional independence, and capacity for self-soothing that strengthens rather than weakens social bonds. These individuals formed relationships from preference rather than neediness, could tolerate conflict without catastrophizing, and maintained individual identity within partnerships. Solitude wasn't making them antisocial. It was making them securely social, able to connect deeply because they weren't desperately dependent on connection for self-regulation. The long arc of development shows that befriending yourself in solitude makes you a better friend to others. The alone but not lonely phenomenon describes people who spend significant time in solitude without experiencing loneliness. Psychologists studying this group found several common factors: strong self-acceptance, rich internal lives, ability to self-regulate emotions, engagement in solitary activities they find meaningful, and maintenance of a few deep relationships rather than many superficial ones. Brain imaging shows these individuals activate positive affect regions during alone time, similar to others' activation during social contact. They've learned to generate internally what most people require externally: interest, comfort, contentment. This isn't genetic or effortless. Most developed these capacities through deliberate practice, often after periods of painful loneliness that motivated them to change their relationship with solitude. You're not born comfortable alone. You learn to become comfortable through patience and practice, and gradually accepting your own company. Solitude allows emotional experiences to complete their natural cycles. Emotions. Neuroscientists now understand are temporary neurochemical events that arise, peak, and naturally subside within minutes, if not interrupted. But social situations often require suppressing emotions before they complete: anger interrupted by politeness, sadness postponed for appropriateness, fear hidden to avoid judgment. These incomplete emotional cycles leave residual activation that accumulates as background stress. In solitude, you can let emotions run their full course without social management. Cry until the crying naturally stops. Sit with anxiety until it peaks and ebbs. Feel anger fully without needing to perform composure. Research shows this emotional completion during alone time reduces overall emotional reactivity. The feelings don't disappear, but they discharge rather than accumulate. Solitude provides safe space for emotional weather to pass through you rather than getting trapped inside you. We now understand that solitude is not absence. It's presence with the one person you'll spend your entire life with: yourself. From the moment you become conscious until the moment consciousness ends, you are your only constant companion. Others come and go. Relationships begin and end, but you are always there with you. This obvious fact has profound implications if you find your own company unpleasant, boring, critical, anxious, disappointing. You're living a lifetime with someone you don't like. But if you can cultivate appreciation for your own mind, comfort in your own presence, interest in your own thoughts, you're never truly alone, even when solitary. The quality of your entire life depends substantially on the quality of your relationship with yourself. Solitude is where you develop that relationship, where you practice being good company for yourself. It's not narcissism or self-obsession, it's basic self-care. Ensuring the person you spend every moment with is someone you can tolerate. ideally even enjoy. Attention restoration theory suggests that solitude in natural settings provides unique cognitive benefits. Urban environments require directed attention, monitoring traffic, navigating crowds, processing advertisements, which depletes mental resources. Natural solitude allows attention to rest while gentle stimuli, rustling leaves, bird songs, flowing water, engage what's called soft fascination. Studies show that 20 minutes of solitary nature time restores attention capacity more effectively than the same time in urban solitude or social nature time. The combination of aloneness and natural setting creates optimal conditions for mental restoration. This might explain the deep appeal of hiking alone, walking solo on beaches, sitting silently in forests. You're not just resting, you're allowing your overtaxed attention systems to recover in an environment that engages them gently rather than demanding effort. Solitude in nature is medicine for overstimulated minds. Reading during solitude creates a unique form of connection. Solitary intimacy with absent authors' minds. When you read alone, you enter the consciousness of someone who may be distant in time or space, sometimes long dead, yet their thoughts become yours. This paradox, profound connection experienced in complete solitude, offers something social interaction, rarely provides communion with minds at their most articulate, thoughts preserved at their clearest. Research shows that reading literary fiction specifically increases theory of mind, the ability to understand others' mental states. Despite being a solitary activity, you're alone, but practicing empathy. Isolated but expanding social understanding. Books, essays, poems become companions that make solitude rich rather than empty. The great readers are often comfortable being alone because they've learned that solitude with books is different from solitude with mere absence. Solitary rituals and routines provide structure that prevents aloneness from becoming isolation. People who thrive in solitude often develop personal rituals: morning coffee while watching sunrise, evening walks alone, Sunday afternoons in quiet reading, weekly solo meals at favorite restaurants. These aren't just habits, they're intentional practices that frame alone time as valuable rather than empty. Psychological research shows rituals increase sense of control and meaning, even when objectively arbitrary. Your solitary rituals signal to yourself that this time matters, that you're worth this care. They transform alone time from something that happens to you into something you create with purpose. The ritual cup of tea isn't just hydration, it's honoring your own company. The regular solo walk isn't just exercise, it's keeping an appointment with yourself. Ritual elevates routine solitude into sacred solitude, flow states. Deep absorption in challenging activities occur more readily during solitude. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on flow shows it requires uninterrupted focus on tasks matching your skill level. Social interaction, however enjoyable, constantly interrupts this focus. Studies find that artists, writers, programmers, and other creators structure extensive alone time specifically to access flow. During flow, self-consciousness disappears, time perception alters, and the boundary between self and activity dissolves. Paradoxically, you lose awareness of being alone precisely because you're alone. No social monitoring, no performance pressure, just complete absorption. Many people's peak experiences happen during solitary flow, moments when they're so engaged with an activity that loneliness is impossible. Solitude enables the loss of self that makes consciousness most vivid. Solitude affects moral reasoning and ethical decision-making, without social pressure or judgment. People in solitude often make different moral choices than in groups. Research shows solitary ethical reflection tends toward more carefully considered positions and greater willingness to stand by unpopular conclusions. Groups, even unconsciously. Pressure, conformity. Alone. You face only your own conscience. This is why many philosophical and ethical traditions recommend solitary contemplation for moral discernment. You can't easily rationalize or deflect when alone with difficult questions. No audience to perform for. No social consequences to manage. Just you and the question of right action. Historic figures from various traditions report their deepest moral insights emerging during solitary retreat. Solitude clarifies ethical vision by removing the distorting lens of social expectation. Dreams and REM sleep patterns are influenced by daytime solitude. Studies show people who spend adequate alone time during waking hours experience richer, more emotionally positive dreams and better sleep continuity. The mechanism appears to involve completing emotional processing during solitude that would otherwise require nocturnal dream work. Your brain uses both waking solitude and sleeping dreams for similar processing, integrating experiences, working through emotions, consolidating memories. Adequate waking solitude reduces the processing load dreams must carry, allowing sleep to be more restorative. Conversely, zero alone time overloads dream processing, potentially creating more fragmented sleep and disturbing dreams. Solitude and sleep are partners in the work of psychological integration. Shortchanging one overburdens the other. Alone time strengthens identity boundaries, your sense of where you end and others begin. People who rarely experience solitude often struggle with enmeshment, taking on others' emotions, opinions, or needs as their own. Solitude provides practice in maintaining separate selfhood. When you're alone, you can't blur into someone else. You're forced to experience your discrete existence. Regular solitude seems to strengthen what psychologists call differentiation, being emotionally connected to others without losing yourself in them. You learn your emotions are yours. Your preferences are yours. Your life is yours to author. This isn't selfishness. It's healthy boundary maintenance that actually improves relationships by ensuring two whole people connecting rather than fragments merging desperately. The experience of wonder, awe at beauty or vastness occurs powerfully during solitude. Research on awe shows it reduces self-focus, increases feelings of connection to something larger, and shifts attention from personal concerns to transcendent perspectives. Interestingly, studies find solitary awe experiences often produce more profound effects than shared ones. Watching a sunset alone, standing before an ocean in solitude, stargazing without company. These moments allow complete absorption without the social awareness that partially occupies attention in groups. Awe experienced alone can feel almost religious regardless of beliefs. A sense of communion with something beyond self. These moments often become defining memories, reference points that sustain meaning for years. Solitude enables encounters with wonder that shared experience, however lovely, can sometimes dilute. Solitary exercise produces different psychological benefits than group exercise. While both provide physical health, solitary running, swimming, or hiking allows the meditative quality that group activities interrupt: the rhythm of breathing, the repetition of movement, the lack of conversation. These create conditions for what runners call flow state or runner's high. Studies show solitary exercise particularly benefits people who use movement to process emotions or work through problems. The combination of physical activity and mental solitude seems to facilitate insight and emotional regulation in ways neither alone or physical activity with others fully replicate. Many people's deepest realizations arrive during solitary exercise, as if movement shakes thoughts loose, while quietness lets them settle into new patterns. Being alone has taught us that the relationship with yourself is the foundation for all other relationships. Every connection you form, romantic partnership, friendship, professional collaboration, parental bond, is mediated through your self-relationship. If you don't trust yourself, you'll struggle to trust others. If you're harshly critical of yourself, you'll either expect harsh criticism from others or be hypersensitive to any feedback. If you find yourself boring, you'll assume others find you boring too. Your relationship with yourself sets the template for how you expect to be treated. Solitude is where you can work on that foundational relationship, where you practice self-acceptance, where you learn to keep yourself company in ways that feel nourishing rather than depleting. This isn't selfish preparation for relationships. It's necessary preparation. You can't sustainably give from emptiness, connect from fragmentation, or love from self-hatred. Solitude offers space to cultivate the self that will show up in every relationship you ever have. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Breathe slowly. Feel the cycles. Your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. A small rhythm within the vast universe. Everything moves in cycles day to night, season to season, alone to together, and back to alone. You are also part of that eternal movement, connection, and solitude. Like breathing in and breathing out, you don't need to hold on to anything. Let everything unfold in its perfect rhythm, like planets silently rotating in their orbits, unhurried, unresisting, simply existing. We're almost there now. You are never truly alone. You're always with consciousness itself, the awareness experiencing this moment. Even in complete isolation, there's the one who notices being isolated. Consciousness, observing consciousness. This sounds abstract, but it's the most direct experience you have right now. Thoughts are appearing in awareness. Sensations arise. Emotions flow. But beneath all changing content, awareness itself remains constant. Witnessing. Some spiritual traditions call this the true self, the observer, being itself. Neuroscience locates aspects of it in the default mode network. But labels aside, you can notice it directly. You're never actually alone because awareness is always present, experiencing even aloneness. This realization transforms solitude from abandonment to presence. You're always here with the unchanging witness of all experience. The relationship with yourself is the most intimate relationship possible. No one else can access your subjective experience. No one can feel your feelings or think your thoughts. The privacy of consciousness means you're in eternal intimacy with yourself in ways impossible with others. You can hide thoughts from everyone else, but not from yourself. You can perform for others, but not for your own awareness. This forced intimacy can feel confronting. There's no escape from yourself, but it's also the foundation of authenticity. Solitude strips away the possibility of performance, leaving only genuine presence. Learning to be comfortable in this ultimate intimacy is learning to be at home in consciousness. It transforms existential aloneness from prison to sanctuary. The etymology of alone traces to Old English all one, whole, complete. Language sometimes preserves ancient wisdom. Being alone was originally understood as being whole unto yourself, not as lacking others. Somewhere language shifted, and alone became associated with loneliness, incompleteness. But perhaps the original sense was truer. In solitude, you're not missing half of a pair. You're experiencing yourself as complete. This isn't denying the joy of connection, just recognizing that you're not fundamentally fragmented, waiting for others to make you whole. You arrive into this world complete. Others complement and enrich, but don't complete. Alone equals all, one equals whole. The linguistic root suggests solitude as wholeness remembered. Silence is not empty. It's full of what's usually covered by noise. When external sound quiets, you notice subtle sounds always present your heartbeat. Breath, ringing in your ears. The white noise of neural activity. But more than that, you notice the space in which all sound occurs. Silence reveals itself not as absence, but as presence. The ground in which noise appears and disappears. Contemplatives describe silence as fullness, creativity's source, the pregnant void from which newness emerges. In deep solitude, you might experience silence as almost substantial, a palpable presence rather than mere absence. This sounds mystical, but it's experiential. Sit alone in true quiet long enough, and silence becomes a kind of company, the deepest companion, always available beneath surface noise. Solitude is homecoming, not exile. Everywhere you go, every relationship you enter, every experience you have, you are there. You're the constant in every changing circumstance. Yet many people spend lives trying to escape themselves through constant distraction, entertainment, social engagement. They treat their own company as exile, something to avoid. But what if solitude is actually return, coming home to yourself after time away? Many people who initially feared being alone report, after building solitude capacity, that aloneness began feeling like homecoming, like taking off uncomfortable clothes after a long day, like finding your way back to a self you'd been away from, the place you can always return to, regardless of external circumstances, is your own presence. Learning to make that place welcoming is learning to always have a home. Being alone offers the gift of undivided self-attention. During social time, your attention necessarily divides between yourself and others. Even in the most supportive relationships, you're monitoring their reactions, considering their needs, managing impressions. This isn't wrong. It's how connection works, but it means you're never fully focused on yourself. Solitude returns your full attention to your own experience. You can notice subtle emotions without interruption, track chains of thought to their conclusions. Sit with physical sensations until you understand their message. This undivided self-attention is how you truly know yourself. Many people live entire lives without ever giving themselves sustained, uninterrupted attention. They know themselves only through others' reflections. Like trying to know your face having never looked in a mirror. Solitude is looking directly. No mirror needed. Learning to enjoy your own mind is learning to never be bored. Boredom implies your mental landscape is barren. Thoughts uninteresting. Imagination unstimulating. But consciousness is endlessly complex. Memory, connecting to memory. Sensations arising. Ideas forming. Emotions shifting. People comfortable in solitude often describe never being bored because their own mind provides interest. They find their thoughts worth following, their memories worth reviewing, their imagination worth exploring. This isn't narcissism. It's curiosity about consciousness itself. You contain multitudes, every experience you've ever had, every thought you've ever thought. Infinite potential thoughts still unthought. Getting to know yourself is a lifetime project that solitude makes possible. Far from boredom, it's the most engaging investigation available. Exploring the mind from inside the mind. Some philosophies suggest that aloneness as practice for death sounds morbid, but contemplative traditions find it actually comforting. You enter this world alone. No one can be born with you. You leave it alone. No one can die with you. Everything between is shared, but the ultimate transitions are solitary. These traditions suggest that becoming comfortable with existential aloneness reduces fear of death. If you've practiced being alone with yourself, if you've found peace in your own presence, then the final aloneness carries less terror. You've already experienced the dissolution of external reference points. You've already discovered you can exist without constant connection. This isn't encouraging isolation. It's suggesting that solitude might be rehearsal for the final solitude, making that passage less frightening by removing some of its unfamiliarity. In the quiet of alone time, you touch something that will remain when everything else falls away. The universe experiencing itself through you makes every moment of consciousness precious, including, especially, moments alone. Cosmologists note that you're the universe become self-aware atoms that once floated in space, now arranged in patterns complex enough for consciousness. You're not in the universe. You're a part of the universe, aware of being part of the universe. In solitude, this awareness becomes clearer, without distraction of others' presence. You're simply awareness experiencing awareness. Some find this perspective changes how solitude feels. Less like you're alone and abandoned. More like you're the universe's opportunity to know itself in this particular form, in these quiet moments alone. Existence itself becomes conscious through your consciousness. Solitude transforms from isolation to participation in the universe's self-awareness. Every great insight in history came from someone alone with their thoughts. Einstein's thought experiments, Newton under the apple tree, Buddha under the Bodhi tree, Darwin during long solitary walks, Marie Curie in her laboratory, Maya Angelou in her small rented room. Breakthroughs don't emerge from committee meetings or crowd collaboration. They emerge from solitary minds given enough quiet to make connections no one's made before. This doesn't diminish collaboration's value, but it honors solitude's unique contribution. the space for thoughts no one else is thinking. Connections no social context would encourage. Ideas too strange to survive group consensus. Progress requires people willing to think alone, to follow mental paths into territories no conversation would reach. Solitude isn't escape from the world's work. It's where some of the world's most meaningful work happens. Solitude teaches you who you are when no one's watching. Social identity is partially performance. You're the self you show others, the roles you play, the impressions you manage. This isn't fake. Social identity is real and needed, but it's not complete. In solitude, performance becomes impossible. No audience, no role, no impression to manage. What remains is closer to your authentic self, the thoughts you think when unburdened by others' expectations, the preferences you hold when no one's judging, the values that guide you when no one's watching. This unobserved self is worth knowing. It's who you actually are beneath social presentation. Many people discover, after building solitude capacity, that they're somewhat different than they thought. Beliefs they assumed were theirs were actually adopted to fit in. Preferences they performed became confused with genuine preferences. Solitude clears social noise, revealing the signal of authentic self. The difference between loneliness and solitude is self-love. Same aloneness. Different relationship with self. Loneliness is being alone with a self you don't like, don't accept, don't want to be with. Solitude is being alone with a self you've learned to appreciate, accept, even enjoy. This isn't about achieving perfect self-esteem or eliminating all self-criticism. It's about basic friendliness toward yourself. Would you want to spend time with someone who constantly criticizes you, finds you boring, thinks you're inadequate? Of course not. But many people treat themselves this way, then wonder why being alone feels awful. The work isn't making yourself better enough to deserve your own company. The work is extending to yourself the basic kindness you'd offer any companion patients with flaws. Curiosity about thoughts, gentleness with struggles. When you become kind company for yourself, solitude transforms. The aloneness doesn't change. Your relationship with who you're alone with changes everything. Being comfortable alone means being comfortable anywhere. If you can't tolerate your own company, you'll be uncomfortable in every situation, desperately seeking connection to avoid yourself. Anxious when alone, dependent on others for emotional regulation. But if you're comfortable with yourself, you carry that comfort everywhere. Alone at home or in a crowd, you remain at ease because your baseline state isn't desperate need. This makes you more present in relationships because you're choosing connection from preference, not fleeing solitude from fear. You can be genuinely alone in the morning and genuinely together in the evening, each state complete rather than each compensating for the other. Self-comfort is portable. It's the security you carry everywhere because it's based on relationship with yourself, not on external circumstances. Learning to be okay alone means learning to be okay. Period. Your thoughts are conversations with yourself, dialogues between different aspects of consciousness. Notice how thinking often has a conversational quality. You ask yourself questions, answer them, disagree, reconsider. You're both speaker and listener, both questioner and answerer. This internal dialogue is how consciousness examines itself. In solitude, this conversation becomes clearer. more developed. You can follow thoughts to completion without external interruption. You can have arguments with yourself, working through multiple perspectives. These internal dialogues are needed for reasoning, decision-making, self-understanding. They're also, when recognized, evidence that you're never truly alone. There's always the aspect asking and the aspect answering, the one thinking and the one aware of thinking. Consciousness is inherently relational, even with itself. Your mind is populated by various voices, perspectives, parts. You contain a conversation. The quiet mind hears what the busy mind misses. Subtle intuitions, faint warnings, gentle callings that loud mental activity drowns out. In solitude and silence, these quiet signals become audible. A gut feeling about a decision, a creative idea half-formed, a sense something's wrong before you can articulate why. These aren't magical. They're pattern recognition, implicit knowledge, somatic wisdom that doesn't speak in clear sentences. Your body and unconscious mind know things before your conscious awareness catches up. But constant mental noise makes these signals impossible to detect. Solitude creates space for subtle knowing. Many people who trust their intuition credit regular alone time for developing that trust. In quietness, they learn their quiet knowings are often accurate. This isn't mysticism. It's listening to the full range of your intelligence, including parts that speak softly. Solitude is where you remember your own voice, the authentic expression beneath social adaptation. Everyone code switches, speaking differently with parents, friends, colleagues, strangers. This is normal and adaptive, but constant code switching, never having space to speak authentically even to yourself, can create confusion about what you actually think. Solitude provides space to rehearse authentic voice without audience pressure. Journaling, talking to yourself out loud, thinking without self-censorship. These solitary practices help you discover how you'd express yourself if no one was judging. Some people discover through solitude that their public voice has diverged significantly from their private truth. Not lying exactly, just emphasizing certain aspects, suppressing others. Time alone lets you rebalance, reminding yourself of your full voice. Then, when you speak publicly, it comes from a place you recognize rather than from performance alone. Being alone reveals that the longest relationship you'll have is with yourself. Friendships begin and end. Romantic partners come and go. Family relationships change. But from your first conscious moment to your last, you're continuously present to yourself. This relationship's quality matters more than almost anything else because it never stops. Yet many people never consciously work on it. Assuming self-relationship should be effortless, they work on friendships, invest in romance, manage professional relationships, but never consider deliberately cultivating relationship with themselves. Solitude is where that cultivation happens, where you learn to speak kindly to yourself, forgive yourself, comfort yourself, challenge yourself, celebrate yourself. Developing a good relationship with yourself isn't narcissism. It's recognizing the continuous relationship that underlies every other relationship. If this primary relationship is adversarial, every other relationship suffers. If it's compassionate, everything else improves. Solitude is the birthplace of authenticity because performance requires audience. You can't be inauthentic alone. There's no one to pretend for. The self that exists in complete privacy is as close to authentic as self gets. This doesn't mean your social self is false. Social identity is real, but it's necessarily curated, emphasized in certain ways, managed for impression. In solitude, that management becomes pointless. You don't need to emphasize strengths or hide weaknesses. You don't need to be interesting, impressive, or acceptable. You can simply be whatever you are in this moment, observed by no one but awareness itself. Many people find this terrifying initially because it reveals aspects of self usually kept hidden, but gradually, this unguarded selfhood can become refuge. Solitude as the one place you don't have to perform, manage, or maintain any image. Just existence, unobserved, uncurated, unself-consciously real. In stillness, you find what was always there, but hidden beneath motion and noise. Your core self, the part unchanged by circumstances and time. Every experience you've ever had, you were present for. Every age you've ever been, you were there. Consciousness has remained continuous, even as everything else changed. In solitude and silence, this continuity becomes apparent. You're not the person you were at 7 or 17 or 27. Bodies change, beliefs change, relationships change, but there's a sense of you that's witnessed all those changes, unchanged by them. Contemplatives call this witness consciousness, the observing presence. Neuroscience locates aspects in the default mode network, but experientially. You can simply notice something in you has been watching your entire life unfold. Solitude quiets enough activity that you can recognize this ever-present awareness. The you that's been you all along. Being alone teaches that you are enough, exactly as you are, right now, not someday when you improve, achieve, or become better. Not only when someone loves you, validates you, or chooses you, right now, in this moment. Alone in this room, you are sufficient. Your existence doesn't require justification through achievement or relationship. You're not half of a pair needing completion. You're not broken, needing fixing. Your consciousness experiencing itself through this particular form. And that is inherently complete. This isn't arrogance or delusion. It's recognizing your basic okayness beneath all striving, all proving, all earning of worth. Solitude strips away everything you use to justify existence. Accomplishments, relationships, roles, leaving only bare presence, and discovering that bare presence is enough. You don't need to become anything. You're already here. Solitude reveals that the peace you seek outside exists inside. We often imagine peace will come from perfect circumstances, right relationship, ideal career, comfortable income, no problems. But externals constantly change. Seeking permanent peace through changing circumstances is like building a house on waves. However, in deep solitude, you might glimpse peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, the stillness beneath thought, the calm beneath emotion, the silence beneath noise. This isn't achieved or earned. It's discovered, already present. Contemplatives point to it. Neuroscience shows brain states associated with it, but ultimately, it's experiential. You notice thoughts arising in peaceful space. emotions appearing against silent background, circumstances changing while awareness remains still. This peace isn't escape from life, but recognition of life's deepest foundation, and it's only accessible in quietness. In aloneness quiet enough to notice what's always been there. You came into this world alone, you'll leave alone. Everything between is practice, birth and death. The ultimate passages are solitary. No one accompanies you into existence or out of it. This isn't sad. It's the nature of individual consciousness. Between these solitary bookends, you practice aloneness in smaller ways, quiet mornings, solo walks, private thoughts, independent decisions. Each moment alone is rehearsal for the two great solitudes that frame life. Some philosophies suggest that befriending aloneness throughout life reduces death's terror. You've practiced. You know you can exist in your own presence. The final aloneness, though unknown, won't be entirely unfamiliar. This perspective doesn't make solitude morbid. It makes it sacred. Each quiet moment a small connection to the great mystery of existence itself. Solitude is not emptiness. It's fullness without distraction. When people say they feel empty alone, they often mean absent of external stimulation, not actually empty. Look closer. Thoughts are present. Sensations, emotions, memories, imagination, awareness itself. The inner landscape is remarkably full, constantly active, but we're so accustomed to external entertainment that internal fullness goes unnoticed. Solitude invites you to explore that inner fullness. What thoughts arise unprompted? What memories surface? What does imagination create when given space? You contain vastness, decades of experience, millions of thoughts, endless creative potential. Solitude isn't entering emptiness. It's finally paying attention to the fullness you carry everywhere, but rarely notice. The quiet room isn't empty. You're there, and you're full of consciousness, memory, sensation, thought. A universe of experience exploring itself. The ultimate companionship is your own presence. You seek companionship in others, someone to share experiences, provide comfort, offer perspective. These are beautiful and needed. But the companionship of self-presence offers something unique. It's always available. You can't always have others present, but you can always be present to yourself. Presence means awareness, attending to experience without judgment or distraction, being with what is, as it is. When you develop this capacity through solitude practice, you discover a stable ground beneath changing circumstances, alone or with others. You can always return to simple presence, noticing breath, feeling sensations, observing thoughts. This isn't replacement for human connection. It's the foundation that makes all connection richer, because you're not desperately dependent. You bring presence, already whole, choosing to share it. So what is the science behind being alone? It's the science of becoming whole. Every finding points to one truth: you are fundamentally complete. And solitude is where you remember this, not where you achieve completeness, where you recognize what was always present beneath constant seeking, the brain activity, hormone shifts, creative insights, all our consciousness returning to itself. Being alone isn't deficiency. It's opportunity to meet yourself and recognize you are enough, exactly as you are, alone or together. You lack nothing. Being alone reveals the deepest truth: you are enough, exactly as you are, right now. Not because you've achieved anything or someone loves you. You're enough because consciousness experiencing itself through your form is inherently complete. In deepest solitude, all pretense falls away. Just being. And being is enough. You've been complete all along, just convinced otherwise. But in quiet moments alone, truth whispers, you exist. You are aware. And that existence needs no justification. You are already home. You always have been. And so, our quiet journey through the science of being alone comes to a gentle close. We've traveled from the brain's immediate fear response when others disappear to the deeper truth of consciousness, recognizing itself in solitude. From understanding how loneliness hurts like physical pain, to discovering how chosen solitude heals like coming home, we've seen how the same aloneness can be torture or sanctuary, depending entirely on your relationship with the one person you're alone with, yourself. From ancient survival instincts to modern neuroscience, from developmental psychology to spiritual wisdom, every perspective converges on the same insight. Being alone isn't about absence. It's about presence with yourself. Being alone reminds us that the deepest relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Much of life's richness happens in quietness. Thoughts forming, memories integrating, self-understanding deepening. In the gentle space between heartbeats when no one else is watching, solitude reveals patience, resilience, sufficiency. Without time alone with yourself, authentic self-knowledge remains impossible, buried beneath constant social performance. By pausing to notice, you glimpse the extraordinary truth hidden in ordinary aloneness. You are never actually separate from consciousness itself. Even in deepest isolation, awareness is always there with you. You are always home. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can. As deep as possible, think about consciousness itself. Yours, mine, everyone listening, all awareness everywhere. Perhaps all connected in ways we don't yet understand. You are not alone in the universe of minds. Think about how every moment of solitude is consciousness experiencing itself. The universe knowing itself through your particular form. You are awareness becoming aware of awareness. Let your entire being dissolve into the ocean of consciousness, into dreamless rest, into the space before thought. No boundaries left between you and peace. Prepare for deep sleep. Only stillness now. Only presence. Only peace. If this thoughtful exploration of solitude brought you calm tonight, a gentle subscribe helps other sleepless souls discover this peaceful space too. It only takes a moment, but it means the world to us. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. Pass it along softly, but there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight, deeper into yourself than most journeys take you. You can allow these thoughts about aloneness to fade now, like morning mist dissolving into light, leaving only the peaceful calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if gravity itself is gently pulling you down, down into the soft embrace of complete rest. If sleep comes, let it carry you like a river flowing to the ocean, smoothly, inevitably, into a realm where you're never alone, because consciousness is all there is. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm and home. Tomorrow, the world will still need you. Your relationships will still be there. But tonight belongs to stillness, to the peace of your own presence, to the recognition that you are complete, exactly as you are, needing nothing, lacking nothing, already whole. Rest well, dear friend, and remember, even in your deepest solitude, you are never truly alone. Consciousness is always with you. You are always with yourself. And that is enough. That has always been enough. Fall asleep to gentle science. Dream deeper with your own presence. Rest in the truth you discovered tonight. Good night.